Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm your host, Kerry Simmons, and welcome to Everyday Eerie, the podcast where the ordinary meets the extraordinary. Dive into the world of ghost stories, haunted objects, eerie places, and unsolved mysteries that will send shivers down your spine. Each week, we explore the tales that blur the line between the living and the dead, the known and the unknown. So turn down the lights, settle in, and prepare to be spooked. Pablo Picasso said, "Painting is just another way of keeping a diary." Vincent van Gogh stated, "Emotions are sometimes so strong that I paint without knowing it." Art is very powerful. It makes us feel something, whether it be sadness or inspiration. Different pieces speak to different people and in different ways. Some would see art as a way of connecting oneself to a higher sense of spirituality due to the ways in which art can leave us in awe or leave us feeling sadness. Sometimes we feel so strongly, it's as if the art itself is alive. But what happens when the art takes that a little too literally? That brings us into today's episode about haunted art. So we'll be talking about several paintings that are considered haunted or cursed, and the stories behind them. So the first painting we're going to talk about is going to be called The Hands Resist Him, and this painting was done by artist Bill Stoneham in 1972. Now, Bill Stoneham was said to paint with a very dreamlike influence. During an interview, he once stated, quote, "Well, I've always had a connection to what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. I think we all do. Artists, especially visual artists, are barometers for the currents which run through this collective. Dreams are a common experience people may have with this." End quote. His painting depicts a boy wearing a blue shirt and shorts and a female doll resembling a young girl with these somewhat hollow, lifeless black eyes. They're both standing in front of a paneled glass door, and you can see multiple pairs of hands pressed against the glass behind them. According to the artist, he used a picture of himself at age 5 standing in front of a Chicago apartment as his inspiration. The hands are said to represent, quote, "the other lives or other worldly possibilities," while the glass represents the thin veil between a waking and dreamlike state, or the real and the fantasy worlds. The little doll is supposed to represent the companion that will accompany him between these realms. Now, I can tell you right now, there is no realm that I want to be a part of where a little doll with lifeless eyes is my companion. I'm good where I'm at. She can accompany somewhere else. The painting is creepy, in my opinion. When you hear the description, you imagine more of a fantasy, lighthearted type painting, but honestly, what I see is a sad boy standing next to a very creepy little girl doll with ghostly hands trying to grab them through the glass. That's my interpretation of it. Now, this painting, shortly after it was completed, was given over to a gallery owner and an art critic, and even Stoneham confirmed later on that both of these individuals passed away within a year from handling this painting. The painting was purchased throughout this time by actor John Morley, who's most known for his role as Jack Waltz in the movie The Godfather. The painting was said to be hanged in an old brewery until it was finally found by a picker, according to an eBay post selling the painting, claiming that it was haunted. Now, the couple selling the painting were from California, and on their eBay listing, they reported that the hands in the painting seemed to literally move and appear closer in the painting. They claimed that the little boy and girl doll in the painting would move around at night and could be heard and sometimes seen in the room in which they were being displayed. Now, I'm not going to lie, this totally reminded me of Harry Potter, and if it was one thing I was not down with the wizarding world, it was the fact that the paintings would just be moving. That creeps me out, but this definitely reminded me of that. Creepier still is that the couple selling the painting also stated that their 4-year-old daughter would come to them telling them that the boy and the girl in the painting would fight at night and come into her room. So they ended up selling it on eBay for $1,025 with the disclaimer that relieved them of any liability. When Stoneham was asked about this later on, again, he did admit to a couple of deaths and a string of strange coincidences and occurrences surrounding this painting, but his intention was simply to depict the quote-unquote come hither of our subconsciousness. Well, you probably summoned a couple demons in this come hithering, sir, so thank you for that. He was then asked shortly after to create a sequel to this painting, which he did, and it was called Resistance at the Threshold. It was finished in 2004 and basically depicts the same characters in a similar fashion, only 40 years later, and just to add a little pizzazz, a little spice, if you will, the doll is now levitating and its face is half off its head, so I'm sure that will fare well in due time. A third in the series was also created called Threshold of Revelation, and this one was completed in 2012, both available now in greeting card format, in case you're looking for a special way to send a note to a loved one. Now, the next painting we're going to talk about is The Crying Boy. So The Crying Boy is a mass-produced painting originally done by an Italian painter who went by the pen name Giovanni Bragolin, though his real name was Bruno Amarillo. Now, the first painting depicted just that, a portrait of a young boy with tears running down his cheeks, but there were several portraits painted in this series, and some were of boys, some of girls, but they were all shown with tears running down their faces, all crying, all very sad, all very young, but again, some boys and some girls. It was said that originally these paintings were done as a way to pay tribute to the orphans of World War II. These paintings were originally sold to tourists, but were said to be really captivating to young English couples, with a total of about 50,000 prints being sold in the UK alone. This seems all innocent enough, aside from the fact that in 1985, a British newspaper called The Sun wrote an article stating that a firefighter named Peter Hall from Essex reported that in multiple cases of fires in people's homes, there was a painting of a young crying child. This article was originally written when a local family's home had caught fire, making the headlines. The home was just about entirely destroyed, and this firefighter just so happened to be the brother of one of the homeowners. The interesting thing is that these paintings were always untouched and unscathed by the fires, even in the most damaging of cases, and because of this, the firefighter/brother actually warned the family and told them not to purchase the painting and not to keep it, but they didn't listen to his advice, with the homeowner actually purchasing the painting to, quote, test out this theory. Now, this fire in particular was guessed to have been caused by a grease fryer while cooking. However, the fact that these paintings were always unharmed was what struck people to believe that they were cursed. So this notion swept the public so much so that The Sun, the newspaper, had to try to do something to stop these rumors. They went so far as to tell people to send their prints to their headquarters where they would destroy them. But throughout this time, there would be many more strange incidences. For example, a woman named Dora Brand's home would be reduced to rubble just 6 weeks after purchasing the painting. Then, on October 21st of 1985, the painting was left in pristine condition, though the restaurant in which it was hanged was completely burnt to the ground. Just a few days later, a family in Yorkshire would lose their home in a fire, reporting that this painting was untouched completely, while paintings hanging directly to its left and to its right were charred. On October 25th, a gas explosion completely destroyed one family home, while again the painting was totally intact. Some believe that these paintings may have been coated in some type of fire retardant. However, if what I just mentioned wasn't strange enough, a few other cases stand out. In November of 1985, a woman who was nervous about the curse destroyed the painting on her own, but would go on to lose her husband and 3 sons in a fire. Just horrible. Another woman lost her husband, son, daughter, and mother, all in a separate fire-related incident, after destroying her picture to purge herself of it. So that means she lost her husband in one, her son in the other, her daughter in another, and her mother in another. So all died in separate fire-related instances, but she lost all of them after destroying this painting. On November 12th of the same year, 1985, a man named Malcolm Vaughan helped a friend destroy his painting, only to find his own home consumed by fire once he returned from performing this task. Yes, so he went to help a friend destroy the painting, and by the time he got home, his own house was engulfed in flames. And in December of 1985, a photo was found by firefighters lying next to a woman's charred body with no known cause of fire ever identified, and once they turned it over, it was the painting of the crying boy. Another man named Brian Parks' home would catch fire, causing his wife and children to require treatment for smoke inhalation. He states that he destroyed the painting, though once he returned home from visiting the hospital, the painting was back hanging on his charred wall in what was left of his home. Because of the painting's original popularity, other artists had begun to paint versions of crying children as well, which were also found to be weirdly connected to fire. The artist himself passed in 1981, and strangely enough, no one has been able to trace his history at all to help in identifying the mystery behind these paintings. But all I know is that I am not taking any chances with any paintings of crying children, ever. Now, this next painting is one I had initially read about in a book on haunted places. It is called the Tadworth Court Mystery Lady painting. Now, Tadworth Court is the name of a mansion built between 1694 and 1704, and it was built for a man named Leonard Wessel, and it's located in Surrey, England. Over time, it changed hands, becoming a piece of Great Ormond Street Hospital in 1927. In 1929, the home became a 22-bed hospital for children suffering from respiratory illness, and expanded from there until improvements in modern medicine came about in the late 70s, early 1980s, which almost forced the hospital to close its doors. However, a group of nurses, kids, and their parents in the local community began a petition to save the house due to its special history and its beautiful architecture. And they were successful at doing so, and the building wound up being used as a rehab for children with brain injury, with a portion that was opened as a school for children with significant learning disabilities in the early 90s. It now goes by the name the Children's Trust. All of the intriguing history of its existence aside, there's an old painting that hangs in the home, which depicts a lady in a white dress standing amongst a bunch of shrubs, flowers, and fruits. In the background, peering through the shrubs, is the face of another woman. Now, rumors flew about this painting with multiple stories that came about, but around 2013, a descendant of Lord Russell, who is again the original owner of the mansion, named Gregory Bratza, enlisted his friends, an art historian and brother-in-law who is well-versed in the meaning of different plants and fruits that are used in paintings, and he recruited them to assist him in finding out more about this painting. The story that was concluded was that the woman in the painting is the wife of an Italian man named John Fleetwood. John Fleetwood's father supposedly purchased the mansion in 1722, and though the painting does not actually show the woman's death, it is said to be a depiction of it in another form. Now, this lady in white suspected that her sister was having an affair with her husband, and while arguing about this with her sister pushed her over the balcony, causing her to fall on the stone floor below. She supposedly attempted to drag herself to the main entrance of the home to call for help, but ended up passing on the steps outside. Now, around this mansion, sightings of an apparition in white have been described over the years, walking the grounds, and it was reported that the blood-stained floor would be scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed, only for the blood to continue to appear shortly after, until they finally had to gut it and completely replace the flooring. There have also been reports of the sound of muffled crying and the sound of someone hitting the floor as if the entire scene is playing out all over again. And the painting is also not to be moved, as after every attempt at changing its location, the activity seems to increase. So I do have to point out that one thing I thought was sort of ironic was that this mansion has a 200-year history, and in all of its changing of the hands and changing uses over time, it finally ended up becoming a hospital for children with brain injuries, when the lady in white likely died from a significant trauma to her head sustained in the fall, or a significant brain injury, if you will. It was almost as if her passing orchestrated the entirety of what the mansion would become. So I thought that was sort of an interesting tidbit about it. Interesting correlation, I guess you could say. Now, up next on the list of the paintings is the painting The Rain Woman, and it was painted in 1996 by a Ukrainian artist named Svetlana Telets, who you really can't find much information on in general. But the painting depicts a woman with a very long face wearing a big black, almost fluffy-looking hat to shield her from the rain. And the rain behind her is sort of like an abstract kind of rain. Her face is very pale, and her features are sort of strange with like an upside-down, triangular kind of face and a long nose and eyes that seem to be heavy, though they're not completely shut. Now, at first glance, honestly, the painting, it looks like it's a painting of a llama. And once I was able to unsee that, I was able to see a little bit more of her actual face, because when you first look at it, and again, you can see these pictures on my Instagram page. I also am posting this on YouTube, so if you want to see the pictures along with the story, you can go there. But at first glance, it looks like a llama. Tell me that's not true, because it is. But when you're able to unsee that and you actually look a little bit more at her face, it's just a super, super strange painting. There isn't much going on, but it leaves you with a little bit of a weird feeling, like sort of like if you have this painting nearby, you might feel a bit uneasy. It's just the way that she presents herself, and the kind of vague meaning of it is sort of odd. Now, the story of the curse or the haunting around this painting starts with people coming across it and feeling compelled to buy it and own it, which is always a red flag to me, okay? Wanting to buy something that makes sense because you want it, that's one thing. But when people start with the, I felt compelled and it was calling to me, like, nope, this will likely go downhill very fast, so we're not going to give in to that. But anyways, these people who purchased the painting have all reported that shortly after, they would begin experiencing really strange symptoms such as insomnia, nightmares, the feeling of being watched, bad luck. And there has even been reports of people seeing and hearing a tall woman with a white face and black hat walking around their homes. Now, what's interesting too about this one is that the artist herself reportedly had a very strange experience before she even began painting it. So she reports that she felt a compulsion as well to paint this picture, but that each time she would get this strong sense of someone watching her. She also felt like something was guiding her in painting it, as if it were using her hands and working through her. And it took her about 5 hours to finish overall, which was pretty speedy in comparison to some of the other paintings that she had made. And it was almost like she knew she was painting, but when it was all done, she didn't even realize how she got to that point. Kind of like when you're that feeling like you're driving and you're just so on autopilot that you get home and you're like, wow, I just made that entire drive and I don't even remember driving, kind of. She described it as kind of that strange sensation. Now, a few people who purchased the painting returned them, reporting that the painting was waking them up at night, causing nightmares, with the woman always present in the nightmares. And they would see her and hear what appeared to be her walking around their homes. One couple even swore that they had been arguing constantly, nonstop, all of a sudden, after purchasing the painting, with just an aura of bad energy around the home until they got rid of it. And multiple others would report that they felt instant anxiety and experienced insomnia for days on end until they got rid of the painting as well. So that's sort of an interesting kind of curse, and you wonder where it came from and what maybe the painter had in her home that could have been attracting this thing. I don't know. But the next painting we'll be discussing is called The Anguished Man. It depicts a man in a shade of a reddish orange with wide eyes that seem somewhat hollow and a mouth that is held open wide in like an O shape. The background is a bluish color, and looking at it, you can almost hear a scream. This painting is interesting because the painter is unknown, but a man named Sean Robinson of Cumbria, England, inherited the painting from his grandmother, who supposedly kept the painting stored away in her attic for 25 years, as she believed it to be evil. She reportedly told them that she would hear crying and strange noises, and that she would often see a dark figure walking around her home. She also told them that it had been known that the painter had mixed his own blood with the oil paint before committing suicide shortly after the painting was complete. When Sean's grandmother passed away, he and his family inherited the painting, because what better object to pass on to your loved ones than a haunted painting? And shortly after, they began to experience strange sounds like moaning and crying, and they would also see a dark figure walking around the home. He became relatively sure at this point that there was something going on with the painting, because none of this had started until the painting was brought into their home. Now, over time, the sounds and the visualizations began to worsen, as he reported beginning to hear the crying in the corner of his bedroom, and also stated that they were beginning to see this dark figure staring at him from the bottom of his bed at night. So it was almost like it was getting closer to him the longer that this went on. He described this figure as seeming like a middle-aged man. He began to document some of these occurrences with his camera, recording banging sounds between 1 and 5 a.m. The painting would fall over and an orb would fly just above it as well. Mists, cold spots, all of that would be experienced. And Sean eventually moved back in with his parents temporarily, but brought his belongings with him, including the painting, and the strange noises and occurrences began to happen there as well, when there had previously, again, been no evidence of paranormal activity. Sean has posted multiple times on his YouTube channel, which I've linked in the show notes, but clips will also be shown in my YouTube video. Now, when you look at the painting, it does definitely give you creepy vibes again, and the feeling of pain and sadness. Not something I would take the chance of owning myself, personally. But that concludes our episode today on haunted art. Be sure to check out the Instagram page again for the pictures that go along with the stories I'm telling, and check out my YouTube channel to hear the recounts of Sean Robinson on the Anguished Man. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the eerie and unexplained. I hope these stories captivate your imagination, and that you will join me next time for more tales of the strange and supernatural. Until then, keep an eye out for the eerie in your everyday.